I'm Kevin Frank, and welcome to once again this week Weather with Jeff. So we've had a lot of frost events, and as we approach the middle of May, we'll hope that one of these days we'll be starting to get some warm weather, Jeff. But look forward to hearing from you and seeing what's in our forecast this week.
Well, thanks, Kevin, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on what time you're viewing here. Go to my screen. Have you got that, Kevin? Hopefully,
Yes, looks good. Yep.
very good. Well, as Kevin said, we have the calendar may say the second week of May, but climatologically, it seems like we're stuck in late March here. The bottom line is we're getting close to the end of this outbreak. I think there is certainly gradual but noticeable moderation here is coming, and that's sort of the theme of the forecast. I'm going to start here today with my first images with the current upper air pattern. This is as of last night, Monday evening, the 10th. But the upper air feature here, this big cutoff trough across the Great Lakes area, centered right over the Great Lakes. That's the source of our unusual weather here, abnormally cold weather, with just a series, one after another, of air masses from Canada, from the high latitudes. Cold, dry air for this time of the year have moved down into the upper Midwest and then the East. The graphic on the right, the image on the right here, these are temperature departures from normal at the same time. And all of the cool colors, plus even some of the pinks, those are even colder, way below where we should be. And you can see, so it's not just Michigan here, as you can see on the right-hand side, almost all of the central and eastern U.S. has been impacted by this weather pattern, which we've been stuck in to some extent all the way back to the middle of last month. But as you'll see here, there are some definite signs that we'll see some type of moderation here in the not too distant future. Looking at the last week here, and more of a same theme here over and over, the mean temperature departure from normal for the past week, it's all greens, which in this case are much below normal levels, 5 to 9 degrees Fahrenheit on average, below the normal for the week, with the greatest departures in northern and western portions of the state. So that's not a surprise. And again, you can see that's true over the entire region here as graphed. Just as importantly, and this is something that's also the other theme we've been covering here for a lot of the season thus far, total precipitation for the past week. I didn't take the same map from one of the previous briefings and use it again, although it seems like it. We've got a massive area here of precip. This was a weather system that moved up out of the Ohio Valley here this past weekend. And just like several predecessor systems, when the precipitation got to the Michigan border, literally, it almost seems like it here, it stopped. We had, here I'm in Hazlet, close to East Lansing, we did not have any precipitation with the system. We're in the very northern periphery of it. Some locations south, especially the southern tier of counties here along the Indiana and Ohio border, did get some significant precipitation on Sunday, but that was about it. There was also some precip up in the northern lower. And you can see that here, more than half an inch, some cases even a little bit better than that in that part of the state. But this area here, especially across much of central and portions of southwestern lower, the amounts were almost all less than a half an inch, some cases less than a quarter of an inch, which continues, again, that drier than normal pattern that we have seemed to have been stuck in for some time. And I'll talk more about that here in just a second. We've also, as Kevin mentioned, we've been dealing almost with a daily threat or frequency or occurrence of frost and freezing temperatures. We had, for many parts of the state, especially in the north, we had freezing temperatures on a daily basis for the 8th through the 10th. And then again, overnight, last night, more frost. But this last night's event was a little bit different. And that's what I'm showing here is a screen capture from our EnviroWeather site. The coldest temperatures here this morning, on Tuesday morning, were actually across the southwestern lower. And that had not been the case in the previous freezes. Most of the freezing temperatures that we had here over the weekend and into late last week, most of those were in the northern part of the state and interior areas, especially, or more. And most of those, they weren't severe hard freezes. Most of them were low 30s, some cases 28, 29. But look at the values here. These are average hourly temperatures at our EnviroWeather locations here across southwestern lower. And you can see some of those this morning made it down into the low 20s. One thing that is clear, and you may have noticed this too, with these freeze events, they're typical radiation type freeze events where relatively clear skies, and if the winds calm down, that's been the big factor. We can decouple the atmosphere and actually get calm. When we have clear, calm conditions, the surface radiates, it loses its heat quickly, and we see a layer of cold air build up along the surface. And so for many of these events that have occurred over the last several days, you'll notice major differences between relatively high areas on hilltops and ridges where the cold air can drain away literally like a liquid. And where does it go? Well, it collects in low-lying areas. And so you'll get the coldest temperatures there. And that has had a lot of stories about observations about that, and even seen fog, that type of thing. But the key factor with many of these events has been, can it get still with wind? And if you did, likely you did see frost and freezing temperatures, and most likely then in low-lying areas. We have, the bottom line is we're going to see one more and possibly 2 more days of this before a change. So again, look for similar threats tomorrow morning on Wednesday, and at least in northern parts of the state on Thursday. But these events too, climatologically now moving in, we're certainly in the second week of May. These are significantly later than normal, especially for the southern, southwestern, and southeastern parts of the state. So we're beyond where we typically are seeing the last freeze of the season. Our degree day totals here beginning March 1, these are the seasonal totals. With the colder than normal temperatures, you can see some changes in color here. And we had some minor pickup of degree day units here over the last week, but it was not surprisingly much below normal. And if we look on the right hand side here at our degree day totals relative to normal, you can see new colors. It used to be almost all red for the last several weeks, but now we have other colors, and the sort of the neutral tan color here, that's really close to where we should be. But notice northern parts of the state, we have some blues. So amazingly, after being as much as 2 or even 3 calendar weeks ahead of normal just a month ago, now we've lost that entire surplus, and we're actually a few days behind normal in the northern part of the state, still a couple days ahead in the south. But again, that's much less than what it's been, and it's a direct result of, again, the recent colder than normal temperatures. The other issue, of course, is moisture. If you're in the southern part of the state, the latest, this is topsoil or plant available moisture in the top meter. So the top 3 feet, we're looking at a large profile here, but you can see it's a very, very different situation depending on location. For Michigan, much of the southern half of the lower is in really pretty dry, unusually dry conditions. It's better than that. It's green to the north of that, where there's certainly been more precipitation. But note here, again, just to our south, just another reminder of these weather systems that have gotten close, but not close enough. You can see not only even greens, but some blues, and very, very moist soils here. As much as 2.5 inches of rainfall, for example, in portions of Indiana, in Ohio, and in Illinois. With this last weather system, it just didn't make it into Michigan, and here we are. We're dwindling down into in some cases, at 30%, and that's just a value we don't see at this time of the year for plant available moisture in Michigan. So, and one point, I think it's fairly clear and obvious for most, but if this were a month later and we had more leaf area on our vegetation, more transpiration, and if it were warmer with higher atmospheric demand, we probably would be seeing very visible signs of stress, given how little water is in the soil profile at this time of season. So again, the timing is good if we can, assuming we can pick up some precip in the not too distant future here. The drought monitor for the U.S., similar to last week, still about 78% of Michigan now by area classified as D1 or in moderate drought. So relatively little change from the previous week, although I think you would have to make the case that for northern parts of the state, well, northern lower anyway, that probably some improvement, certainly relative to the week or 2 prior to that. And portions of upper Michigan have been much better all along because they've gotten more regular precipitation really than anybody else in the state. So big differences between north and south right now for moisture in the state of Michigan. Well, where are we headed? Here's our surface map as of 8 o'clock Tuesday morning, and it's a real simple one. Meteorologically, you're not going to see much difference in the sequence here, but big area of huge Canadian high pressure system here over the Twin Cities to our north and west. And that's the weather story, really, the forecast for the next several days. That at the center of that high is going to take its time, but gradually move and shift to the east and south a little bit. And so we are looking at an extended, certainly fair weather period. Now, there's one exception to that, and that is the air aloft with this air mass is very, very cold. And that creates a element of instability in the atmosphere. So if we get any warming up of the ground, it should be relatively sunny here today over most of the state, but we could form some clouds and enough to maybe pop off a couple showers or sprinkles. Actually, there's even, I noticed, a couple of flurries reported that it's cold enough up in the northern part of the state here this morning to fall solid. But I'm thinking here later on during the day in the afternoon, we could see a few very isolated sprinkles or showers develop, but it won't be anything significant. It'll just be, again, enough to maybe notice. And the vast majority of areas will remain dry, windy, and unseasonably cool. And that's, again, follows with this high pressure as it begins to move east. More of the same tomorrow, and probably to some extent on Thursday. But by Thursday, the center of the high goes to our east, and we'll start to see return flow out of the south and west. And with that, we should see for the first time some noticeable improvement or moderation in temperature. It's not going to be a skyrocket back up to above normal, but a very gradual warming. And so while today we'll still be looking at another day, amazingly, highs only in the 40s and 50s across most of the state. And that'll probably be the case tomorrow to a large extent, more 50s tomorrow. By Thursday, we will be back up into the 60s, and same on Friday. And then maybe by the weekend here, we will see some 70s, low 70s, but still much closer to normal or where we should be. Low temperatures tonight, once again, probably around 30 in some cases, maybe some upper 20s, warming gradually back into the 30s and then the 40s by this weekend. So we're looking at a very gradual but still noticeable warming trend coming up. In terms of precip, with that high pressure there, other than the sprinkles today, very little to report. Probably no weather, the next weather system, which I'll step through here. I could have almost used the same map here. Here's tomorrow morning. Here is Thursday morning. Again, you can just see that high just taking its time. The next weather system is this sort of diffuse area of low pressure out here in the Rockies. That's Thursday. We will probably won't see that before late Sunday. That's when the next, really, I think, chance for any significant precip. Better chance likely on Monday. So that's the next time we really even think about water, which is another issue. Again, given if you're in one of those dry areas, it's something to think about a little bit, especially with increasing temperatures. With that high over the top of us, another night of the threat of frost and freezing temperatures. These are forecast minimum temperatures here for tomorrow morning on Wednesday. And again, the majority of these, you can see some upper 20s in interior and northern areas of the state to the low 30s. So very similar to where we were to this morning. And then possibly it looks Thursday is going to be a little iffy, but the tendency of our forecast guides sometimes is to move those features a little bit more quickly than they actually go. So I would not be surprised to see yet one more morning on Thursday morning with a similar type of setup with some frost, especially in northern parts of the state, but it could be more than that on. So don't cross that one off. My wife right now is just absolutely hell-bent on putting plants out and getting things planted. And we grew some of our own seedlings, and she's bought a bunch at the greenhouse. But there's some of them are sensitive, of course, to frost and freezing temperatures, and it is Michigan. And if you really want to be safe in most areas, of course, you wait till Memorial Day, but a lot of people can't do that calendar-wise. But if you're in the same situation, please hold off. I think it's the best bet is to wait until late in the week. If you can do that and hold off, everybody's patience is a virtue in this particular case, but we should be better off. And I would say climatologically, most of these, this is late for many, especially for southern parts of the state in terms of these freezing temperatures. we typically are done before that, but this might be it for the next couple days. And you never say never. It's still possible. We've had freezing temperatures all the way into, again, the end of May, even early June in northern parts of the state. But right now, based on the forecast guidance, this might be the last, at least significant chance for frost and or freezing temperatures. We'll cross our fingers. I mentioned the warmer daytime temperatures. Here are forecast temperatures for this Sunday, the 16th. And again, it's been a while since you've seen those kind of numbers on our maps, up into the low 70s. You can see for a good chunk of lower Michigan and well into the 60s in the north. So that would be a very significant or noticeable change from where we've been. And minimum temperatures will also increase from the 30s back into the 40s. And we typically don't think that much about potential evapotranspiration here at this time of the year, but given the situation with dryness, I'm going to put up our first map here. With the warming temperatures, we're also going to see increases in, again, potential ET. We have been down a few hundreds per day with a very, very cool temperatures recently, but with the forecast for warmer temperatures, our weekly totals, you can see here in many cases, are over an inch. And so daily rates here averaged over the week back up to 1/10 to maybe 1/1500ths of an inch. At least that's the potential demand. We don't have that in many southern parts of the state, at least in reserve, but that's what we could see actually transpire and evaporate. And it would be more towards the 1/1500ths, especially as we move into the weekend. It will be, the humidities will be relatively low, and we'll have a little breeze that'll make those values higher. So something at least to keep in the back of your mind, that the water rates, the water demand will be increasing here, especially as we move into the weekend. Speaking of water, how much is forecast here for the upcoming week? And once again, unfortunately, not much to report. You can see on the map, most of the precipitation expected to fall here by next Tuesday morning is in areas once again to our south, in this case, a little bit to our west over the southern Great Plains, where the heaviest precip is coming. But that's a sign of change from, and I'll get to that in just a second. But totals for Michigan, you can see generally on the order of a quarter, half an inch or less for the whole week. The vast majority, almost all of that precipitation, it's what's forecast to fall late Sunday or Monday with that next weather system that I mentioned. So that's all looking out fairly far in advance. There are signs of change in the jet stream flow across North America in the medium term. Both the 6 to 10 day and 8 to 14 day outlooks are telling a very similar story. We would like to see that. Some consistency gives us a little bit more confidence that's the way it's going to shape up. But if you look at the upper air map here, the big difference is we've got a fairly large trough out over the far west, but we've got a ridge over the central part, including right in the middle of the Great Lakes region. And again, meteorologically, that's a very, very high likelihood of above normal mean temperatures. And you can see that's what our forecast now has shifted to. This has been the case over the last couple of days. So there's some continuity to it. And in addition to that, with that trough and with that southwesterly flow across the Great Plains, probably going to see our storm track come up a little bit further north than it's been. And that's, again, if you're in especially the southern part of the state and you saw all that precip approaching and literally the last 3 or 4 events, but never really make it into Michigan, we may see some changes here. And you can see that they've also, the Climate Prediction Center here, also calling for enhanced odds of above normal precip for much of the state. So definitely a tendency pushing towards the warmer and wetter than normal. And that's ironically what our forecast or outlook for May was at one time. It's just that with this recent upper air pattern, we've been stuck in that cool, dry Canadian air type of scenario that the models did not pick up. But warmer and wetter is certainly what's the direction here as we move into the 3rd week and maybe towards the 4th week of May as well. So summarizing, more cool, dry, and we'll call it unusually, perhaps unseasonably cool weather, but it's just for the next day or two. And then there will be a noticeable warm up, gradual warming into the weekend, dry conditions here for the remainder of the week and into the weekend. Next chance for rain, not until late Sunday or Monday. And as you just saw then, the medium range is pointing us in a little bit different direction here, and that's warmer and wetter. And hopefully, again, for some, at least for the southern part, we will see some of that moisture finally make its way over large-scale portions of Michigan. And I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. We'll get those annuals out one of these weeks, huh? Once we get rid of all these frost events.
It is a struggle, and again, if if you my household, it's a real challenge. It's, you just don't you see how much those transplants cost. It's you need to be judicious
Yep,
out there.
exactly. And we'll hope for maybe finally getting some rain maybe next week. But
Yes.
man, you and I had talked kind of off before we started recording. Especially in turf areas, one thing I've noticed is just a slowing of growth, and I think that's just the moisture. The temperatures have been great, but usually we're looking at 3 to 4 day intervals where you think you need to get out and mow and
Yeah.
residential lawns, and now it's like you're going a week and you're going, oh, it just seems just fine. So if we don't get that rain, temps keep going up, then we're definitely going to see stress, especially for people that don't have in-ground irrigation systems.
Right.
So
And it probably for people in the northern part of the region, I'm sure that they're what's all this about, and a much different story. But really for that southern half, it's dry, and again, just go out and dig a hole, and you'll see
Yep.
quickly. It's just something we don't see in Michigan this time of the year very often.
exactly. All right, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it, and we
Right.
will see you next week.
See you next week.